evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Mahoning Drive-In Theatre, the largest single-screen drive-in in the United States. We're certainly glad you could be with us this evening, and don't forget the concession stand is open with all kinds of great things to eat and drink. .3 Mahoning Drive-In Radio, your old friend Virgil back once again for another exciting episode of the podcast. As you guys know, the only podcast dedicated to the love and revival of our beloved drive-in culture, joined as always by my co-host and general manager extraordinaire, Mark. Say hello, my friend.
Attaboy, Luther!
Yeah, there it is. We are revved up and ready to go for the 2025 Mahoning Road Show, and we have almost 10 road show dates for you guys to come out and enjoy a little taste of the Mahoning, a little taste of the drive-in, right in your area, right in your hometown. People always say, hey, you know what'd be great is if the Mahoning was closer to me. Well, here's your chance. You can come out and enjoy a classic drive-in double feature in the setting, a warm setting of a classic indoor theater. Today, we are really excited because we are joined by the incredible team at the Everett Theatre. We have a show with them on March 7th. And when you talk about drive-in double features or dream double features, we've been talking about this for so long. And the fact that we get to screen Ghost and Mr. Chicken and MUNSTER Go Home on the same bill is a dream come true. So today we're joined by Mike Barbato, who is the projectionist at the Everett, Lee Edgar, who is the film chair at the Everett, and Mark Sarro, who is really the promotional guru over there as well as part of the film team. Welcome, guys. We're excited to have you.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, we're real happy to be here.
Glad to be here.
You know, we were talking about Destiny a little bit before we hit record, and maybe out of all of the connections of our ever-widening circuit of theaters that we've been working with, yours feels so perfectly destined because Lee had been coming to the Mahoning. I'm going to let you tell this story, but from my memory, you had been coming to the Mahoning. We ran into each other, you know, and when you're in passing on the lot, you're always in a rush. But I remember you saying, hey, I'm part of this classic theater in Delaware, and, you know, we love what you guys are doing. So the support was there and the seed was planted really early. But Lee, why don't you take us back to that initial meeting and how this kind of roadshow thing came together for us?
Oh, that is exactly right. I mean, I like the idea about that destiny. So,
Yeah.
you know, Virgil, you may remember, so this was back during COVID. I love the drive-in movies. I love movies. And I have, at the time, my kids were about 8 and 9 years old, and they had never been to the drive-in movie theater. And it had been on my to-do list. Hey, we need to do this. And sadly, in Delaware, we don't have any. And there's not very many in our area. But there are some within a radius. And so I started doing some research on, you know, hey, now with COVID and everything, this is the perfect time. We're going to go to the movies. I'm going to take the kids to the drive-in. And started looking around, and I, you know, found in Baltimore there's Benji's, right? Yep. Haven't been there yet, actually, but was looking through them. I was like, Mahoning, this is great, wow! And to boot, your opening weekend, it was a little bit delayed, but your opening weekend was featuring two of my favorite films. It was The Wizard of Oz and Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And then I find out that you guys are a 35 millimeter theater, and the deal was sealed. It was just a dream. So we made just a day trip of it. My wife, kids, and I, we piled up in the car and we drove up for your opening weekend in 2020 to see Wizard of Oz and everything. And so, of course, we stopped because I love neon and signs and everything. So one of the first things we did is we spent a little bit of time outside the marquee there and getting the obligatory photos and everything.
Yes, it's such a draw.
Oh, it is. And that's why I'm glad that we're able to kind of tie that together with some of what we're doing with this event, you know. But checked out the theater, and I wanted to make a point of meeting some people. I was like, I got to see the projectors. And Virgil, you were one of the first I met. I introduced myself, say, hey, I serve as a volunteer at a historic theater in Delaware, and we came up to see you guys, and we project 35 millimeter film, and I'd love to know more. And you guys were great. Brought me into the projection booth, and I got to meet several of your staff and volunteers, and that's where that connection was formed. And Virgil, we remained connected on Messenger and everything. And that was it. And by golly, here just a few months ago, we're talking on 35 millimeter issues. And it's like, oh, yeah, by the way, we're doing this thing. And here we are. And we are just.
What are the chances that we are putting this thing together? And it just clicked in my brain. I'm like, Lee. I think his name was Lee, and I'm racking my brain, I gotta find that connection, and it was just that perfect. Why didn't we do this earlier type of thing? And again, I love that you guys were in that perfect timing as well, of that message coming in at the perfect time.
It's a good deal.
It was meant to be, absolutely.
Well, why don't you guys give us a little rundown of the history of the Everett? I know it's a long history. I know it is beloved. I know it has tie-ins with movie history itself. So I guess really any of you guys, or if you want to kind of break that up.
So the Everett Theatre is just remarkable. And we're kind of looking at each other and smiling because these guys know I love to talk, and especially if it's something I'm excited about. And the Everett is one of them. So
for sure,
I can go on. And the really cool thing is when we're greeting our guests and visitors, very similar to what you're doing at the Mahoning, it's a unique experience. And all of us, we're here doing it because we love doing it and we love sharing the story. And so it's the same with the Everett. I mean, I've actually really only been living in Middletown now for about 10 years and have been involved with the Everett that entire time now. But so really, in the grand scheme of a theater that is now over 100 years old, I'm only a part of that history. But I've really come to know it well, so I'm always happy to share it. And we are really neat. So Middletown, as a community, has actually had a theater, opera house, and this arts house on Main Street since the 1860s. Around the time of the Civil War is when the first opera house was constructed in Middletown. It was very popular, of course, at that time. And that opera house lasted until around 1919 or so. And sadly, it was a stone building that had burned down. The fellow who'd owned it at the time rebuilt very quickly, was able to raise funds and reconstructed a new theater. Unfortunately, that new theater, built very quickly and everything, was primarily wood frame construction. And sadly, it was only open for a couple of years, and it caught fire and it burned down.
Wow.
So fast forward to, and that was in 1919 or so.
1920,
And the theater burned down then in 1921. This is February or March of 21. And knowing that it had only been 2 years, and the fellow who had owned the theater, he'd invested everything into rebuilding, and it burned down again, the community was, really afraid that, well, this is it. This is the end. The fellow who owned the theater, he really rallied. He traveled up to Philadelphia, met with the architectural firm of Hoffman and Heenan, which was very well known at that time for designing theaters on the East Coast. And this was a very important time because it was a transition where you're not so much opera houses and vaudeville and all that. We've got this new thing called a motion picture, right?
Yeah.
And so the Everett Theater, when it was designed, had really two very interesting design elements. One, we're welcoming this very new medium of film and showing motion pictures. So the Everett was to be not just an opera house, but a motion picture theater. So it was designed in that line. So it has a stage and everything to, welcome outside acts and vaudeville. But also it was designed with the idea that we are projecting films. And it having suffered from fires, it was very explicitly designed masonry construction, concrete projection booth in order to protect against fires and such. So anyway, over the course, and that was in March, Old Theater burns down. Come November of 1921, so we're looking at only 6 or 7 months, the theater funds are raised, a design is acquired, and new theater is open and built on Main Street in Middletown.
Out of here.
Right?
Wow.
It's really amazing. And so here we are. So the Everett Theater as we know it has been on Main Street for 102 years now. And the common denominator about the Everett Theater is one of community. So you have a theater that has burned down, and the community is afraid that it's going to be lost. But the man who rebuilt once rebuilt a second time, and they are so grateful for this. In fact, the newspaper, there's all these neat articles. That's the neat thing about the Middletown's Opera House being rebuilt and everything. And about 2 months prior to the theater being reopening, they were talking about, all right, we're going to be opening in November or so. So in September, October, the newspaper ran an article about what should our new theater be named, and they came out with they surveyed all the readers and said, give us some ideas. Well, the community was just so very grateful. There was I believe there was, say, 50 or so suggestions mailed in, the Phoenix and, things like that. But the common denominator, the most common theme was naming the theater in honor of the proprietor who saved the theater. And that fellow's name was J.E. Lewis. Back then you used your initials, J.E. Well, it was John Everett Lewis. Everett, the Everett. And that was the most common name that people came up with. And so there it was. It was named the Everett. And 102 years later, we're still the Everett. And I talk about community because, like many theaters, suffered that decline. Come the 1970s, 80s, you've got cable television and all these other things to do. And so the Everett fell upon hard times, looking into the 70s and ultimately closed. Again, the same community that really rallied to save a theater 50 years previously rallied around, again, saving the theater. There was talk of the theater perhaps being sold, torn down, made into
going into a shopping mall. They were going to gut it out and put stores inside.
Wow.
That would have been terrible.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's what we find with a lot of these movie houses they haven't been able to stand that test of time. Same thing with drive-ins. Talking to drive-in owners is land became too valuable. The development around them got too, extreme. And it's like, I love this crossover with community, as you talked about, because a big part of the Mahoning legend is really built on the backs of the fans who rallied behind us and saved us multiple times from closure. And, it's funny they were going to call you guys or suggested the Phoenix, because that's what we always said is like, we're going to keep rising. It doesn't matter if you have this supportive fan base behind you and community behind you. You really feel that you can swing for the fences, and you can feel that love with your guys' theater as much as ours. And I love that they literally have saved you guys over, the last 100 years multiple times.
Yes.
Well, absolutely. When I welcome the audience, a brief curtain speech ahead of time, and hey, 100 years. But what's more impressive, the fact that we've now been over 102 years on Main Street, or the fact that over 40 of those 100 years, the theater has been sustained largely in part by its community. The community had saved it. We had a woman by the name of Helen Combs Davis, who was who really led the grassroots effort to save the theater. They raised funds, they purchased it from the owner, and organized a nonprofit organization that to this day is managed by members of the community who volunteer to serve on the board of directors, and then volunteers who run everything from box office to the projectors to concessions, set build, techs, you name it. Most of those things are all done by volunteers. So that's something we're very proud of. That's a little bit about the Everett's history. And the neat thing too, it is a remarkably beautiful theater for a small hometown like ours. We seat actually 484 people between the first floor and balcony.
Wow.
And it's really, the architecture is really quite remarkable.
It is pretty.
Yeah.
So we look forward to having you come visit us and check it out.
Oh, we're so excited. And the whole idea of this road show was not just taking our experience to 35 millimeter houses that naturally have a 35 millimeter following, but our audience coming and being exposed to what you guys do and the magic of the Everett. And that's really what I love about this cinematic community that we are all part of is every single house that is existing is a passionate group of people just like us who are all heart and want to put every single ounce of themselves into their community space because they see how essential and important it is or how essential and important it was for them in their lives. But I'm so curious about you guys were right on this perfect timeline with the rebuild of a theater being catered to the film experience. So, what capabilities do you guys have? What kind of standout elements are there still maybe remaining about the Everett or that might be unique about the Everett?
I'll let our senior projectionist, Mike, handle that one.
Well, I mean, the main thing is we still have the 35 millimeter projectors, carbon arc. They were put in our theater in 1941, and they're 1939 vintage. They came from a theater in Baltimore. We got them apparently put in there. So those same projectors have been in there ever since, and they still run like a clock.
I'm going to have you repeat it just because our audience are so passionate about film projection and 35 millimeter. You said carbon arc, am I correct?
That's true.
My
The lamp
man.
house is a carbon arc operated. It's a welding machine under the floor, the welding machine. So it's just an arc between two carbon rods, and that produces such a bright light, shines through a parabolic mirror out through the lens. So there's no
And
balls
that was
involved.
the norm before the kind of push of bulbs, and
Oh
the
yes,
pressurized xenons that we still use at the Mahoning. So, what an amazing piece of preservation that is. Sorry, I didn't want to
no, that's
interrupt you.
fine.
It's so mind bending.
I mean,
So,
And it's
what?
worth noting too, because not only is 35 millimeter a good selling point for many audiences who now increasingly many are experiencing 35 millimeter for the first time, but for those of us in the 35 millimeter circles, we recognize how special it is that, there's only a handful of 35 millimeter theaters, theaters with that projection capability left in the United States, and of
Yep.
drive-in theaters, even fewer. But of these 35 millimeter theaters, there's only but a very small handful that have the ability to project with carbon
carbon arc.
arcs.
That's true.
And
Yeah.
the cool thing, what people don't always realize, is that the light produced by those carbon rods is most nearly the color temperature of sunlight. So you are projecting the film with the same light that was used to expose it. And whether it's color or black and white, bottom line is you are getting a near perfect reproduction of what the human eye saw. And that's what's really cool. And the audience can tell. You can tell there is a difference between that and the digital projection.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
You can see it.
I'm curious as far as again the capabilities. Are you guys reel to reel? I take it your full changeover there. That had to have been the
Yes,
norm.
two projectors, and yep, switch from one to the other. Hopefully, without the audience knowing.
That's right. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Right. Looking at the cue marks and switching over and getting the other one ready, and you're kind of busy up there when the movie's running. It's kind of enjoyable.
We're bringing our projection team along with us, Rob and Krista, and they are so excited to lay eyes on this booth and pick your brain because we say it like at the Mahoning, it's a unique situation from the history of theater going in general, where the rock star of the show is the projectionist, where, normally it's pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, but
Yeah, but nobody ever really sees me. They see Lee. He goes up on stage and talks, but I don't see that.
The man up in the booth is the showman who knows no applause.
That's true.
And then you get it.
That's true.
Oh,
Lee
that's
tries to tell people what's going on.
And I guess technically the new kid on the block. I've only been volunteering with the theater for a little over a year now, and Mike is taking me under his wing and kind of showing me the ropes, and not on just the digital projector, but of course the 35 millimeter film. And I think what was the last thing that we did where it kind of Lee was like, "Okay, you got this." I'm like, "No, I don't."
I don't know if we did.
It's like the bird from the nest.
We were at
scenario.
that Tom and Jerry classic cartoon after
Yeah.
we had an issue with our digital. So he's like, "All right, I'll thread it for you, but you got to run this." Like, all right. I'm like,
And
"Where's
sure
Mike?" And we did. And but it's been such an awesome journey the last year watching Mike and working with him and Lee, and them showing me, and kind of giving me the ins and outs of those projectors, and Mike kind of really taking me step by step through his process. It's just amazing to see it. So I think when your projectionists come and see and put eyes on firsthand to see it, it's quite amazing to see these older projectors running and how flawless they run and smooth. And Mike's just knows
They're run by an old guy too, so it makes a difference.
Well, I was going to say it's so incredibly important and really beautifully poetic that the success of a 35 millimeter outfit is all about what I like to call an Obi-Wan, somebody who is willing to pass down this knowledge of how to handle film, how to project film properly, and now every house has become an archival house. So when you're dealing with archival prints or one of a kind prints, it is the role that you play in this cinematic world there at the Everett is such a key place, even though the light is, as you say, rarely shined into the booth. It's really amazing. And I'm curious, where did you learn to project film? Where did your kind of story start?
It happened at the Everett. We moved to Middletown in 1987.
Yeah.
And my wife met Ellen Coombs Davis and talked to her. And of course, Ellen tried to bring everybody in. So she brought my wife in to work on the plays. And my wife became the stage manager for the plays they were doing. So I'd go in and help her build sets and stuff. Of course, then Dead Poets Society was being filmed.
Yes.
So we got involved with the Disney people and stuff and doing all kinds of things. And the two projectionists at the time, the original projectionist, Gordon Brinkle, he had been there from the 60s through the 70s till it's closed. So he came back and he was running it, but he was in his 80s. So he was having a hard time getting up the steps. So the next film, I went up there and started helping him. That was, like, the first film I showed was DuckTales, 1990.
Wow. I love it.
I've been doing it since 1990, ever since. So, of course, there was no digital, so every movie was 35 millimeters. So, got to do it quite a bit.
So, Mike, you realize that's 35 years now.
Yeah, it's a long time.
I love it. Get this man a medal. I am curious again about the kind of layout of the theater. I take it stage because of the vaudeville era. And you guys are just one screen, correct?
Correct.
When the norm of the multiplex is pushed in, a lot of these classic houses got in the mode of closing off their balconies and creating a second house upstairs. And I love a truly preserved movie house. So it sounds like you guys have done an amazing job with all that stuff. You mentioned Dead Poets Society. Can you drop a little knowledge on our audience on what happened with that?
Well, some of you may recall that in 1989, there was a hit film release which starred Robin Williams, known as Dead Poets Society. What many people don't realize is that film was filmed largely in and around Middletown, including a very pivotal scene in the Everett Theatre. So that is very special and near and dear to us. For those of us who have seen the film and you know what I'm talking about, like, oh my gosh, I was the Everett. Now is the opportunity to come and sit in that theater. And if you arrive early enough, people who are in the know come early and claim seat G104. Mark, why is that important?
Because that's where Robin Williams sat for the scene where that took place in the film, and I think when was it upholstered to the black to be called out to that? Was that?
Yeah, so shortly after Robin Williams passed away, and that was
Right.
a great disappointment for us because, of course, it was a very sad moment for everyone who just knew, just how remarkably talented the man was. But not only did we have the special connection with Dead Poets Society being filmed in Middletown, and so many of people that still live in the community were extras, or they watched it being
Yeah.
filmed.
Yeah, I was right there. Yep.
Yeah, Mike was there, and so it's
Talking to Robin
near and-
Williams. Yeah.
Yeah, and the stories, and we'll have to save that for another time, but just the neat things about, when Dead Poets Society was being filmed. But Robin Williams was actually very helpful and gracious to not only our town during the filming and the neat stories, but to the Everett Theatre. Just as we kind of were reborn and were saved, we still had some problems along the way. The ceiling had caved in at one point, and the motion picture industry changed, started transitioning to this new thing called digital, which, as you know, poses significant challenges for theaters who try to make it now in the digital world. Now, we're very fortunate in that we were able to digitize, and thankfully the board of directors at that time recognized the value in paying the extra, going to that extra effort of not just retiring our 35 millimeter equipment, throwing it away, giving it away, or putting it on display, but maintaining it and wiring it all together so we could have the opportunity to use both systems. That was great foresight. But anyway, Robin Williams had donated several items to the Everett Theatre that we auctioned off, which helped pay for the digital projector.
Wow. The heart, is just so pure when you think about that movie. Like that's Robin's crown jewel, it's that movie you can point to and really kind of live by. Man, remind me when we get in that theater. You say people run to that seat.
So, now I'm really curious to know for our listeners out there, seat G104. I am very curious now on March 7th.
Who's going to come early?
Who's going to come?
Yeah.
Get out that seat. So,
they'll be asked to move several times for photos, right? I'm sure. Yeah. I'm curious how the landscape has kind of shifted. You talked about the challenges of the home video era, the multiplex era, and the fact that you guys have been able to survive that. Now that we are in the digital era and you have the capabilities to run 35 millimeter and you have a stage and a single house, which I often refer to as the single screen blues because it limits you on what you can do. How do you balance the programming? Is it all movies? Is it a mixture of kind of community events as well? How do you make it all work?
Right. It is a mixture, and we are very blessed to have more events than we have time or space to manage them. Our real estate comes at a premium. We're very fortunate. In fact, our movie program, which is really great. And in fact, the three of us here, we're primarily engaged with the film program. It is only a fraction of what the Everett Theatre does. And in fact, probably our most popular and successful program, and really the bread and butter, which really sustains the theater, is our live stage program. And we love it. Every year we have anywhere from 6 to 9 live stage performances, and a few of them are always summer camps where we can engage the littles to some of the engaging our youth, from the little ones to the slightly older ones, and then we have some adult programs. So each year we have a season reveal, and everybody's excited. Oh my gosh, what is the Everett going to show? And so we have our live stage programs, and so what that means is that every month people in our community have an opportunity to come out and see 2 weekends worth of whatever the live stage performance is at that time, and then also a movie. But what it does mean is we all together as a team, all of us that volunteer at the Everett, need to work very carefully together
for the schedule
to make the schedule work.
Yeah.
Set up movies is one. We it's very limited with regard to, we only have so many days of the year that we can actually show a film. And when we do, it's not just show up and turn on the projector. It is...
we got to pick the films out, which ones we think we're going to show. And of course, we're not a first-run theater. So there's a multiplex in town. We can't get first-run theaters from the, movies from the movie houses. So...
Sure. If people want to see Avengers, they have an option to do so right down the road.
So we pick more classic movies and stuff like that, and hope we can pick the right ones for people be interested and come out and see.
And I take it it's, a balance because each show, versus your indoor multiplex situation, each show is an event. And when you're talking about 35 millimeter, the hurdles that we need to jump to not just acquire these prints and get them physically across the country to our houses, but the inspection process, the projection process, all these steps that go into it, it's not as simple as when you think about movie going. Now, a lot of people think about this renting a seat, disposable experience that the world of cinema, unfortunately, multiplex has become. What we're talking about with the Everett and the Mahoning is a very concentrated, passionate push toward any show that's about to shine on that screen or on that stage. So I have such respect for you guys and your team for the amount of work and passion that you put in to program year round. That's incredible.
The feelings are very mutual, and it's interesting talking about the challenges that we have because many of them are exactly the same and others are different. You have a screen that's ready to go. You can show up. I mean, you have to do all the preparations that we do, but that screen is there. For us, we need to make sure that live stage is cleared off, work around their set, drop the screen, bring in the speakers
out,
and
connect
everything
up, make sure it works.
Right?
Yeah.
But we also have the latitude and flexibility of the majority of the films that we show are digital, which is so much easier, both in terms of the variety of films that can be selected, how you receive the media, how you put it in. Now, don't get me wrong, that digital projector, I'm a very analog guy. I'm much more comfortable with our 35 millimeter, but realistically, it is a lot easier. And when I think of the Mahoning and what you guys do and tell me, are you the last 35 millimeter drive-in in the country?
The last full-time 35 millimeter drive-in, yes. We don't have the capabilities to run a DCP at the Mahoning. So we say there's not an option besides 35 millimeter for us.
Wow. See, and that to me is very sobering. I see that as, it's very cool, but I'm primarily do the administrative things, the booking and licensing and the reporting and all that. And there's work to that. And it can be challenging.
To get a 35 millimeter, it can be real challenging.
It can be real challenging. And now knowing that that's what you do all the time, oh my gosh.
Thank God the drive-in is seasonal because, the idea of doing it all year round. It's funny because the road show really is a way to extend our season and bring the flavor of what we do out, but it really helps keep our sanity as well because we don't do well with downtime. We need to be in front of this audience.
One of the things that's been interesting in recent years, you talk about getting this material and the challenges. We really like to celebrate ourselves as an arts house, whether it's the live stage performances where we try to have that variety, adult cast, child cast, and a whole variety of genres. We do the same with the films. And it is a careful balance because we are first and foremost an arts house. And so as a result, we like to have a variety of programming that caters to a whole variety of audiences. But there's also the need to balance that desire to celebrate arts as a whole, which includes independent films and lesser known films, with the blockbusters, which you have to have. We have to have enough blockbusters that we're bringing in enough revenue to cover them. Yep. But then still, we knowingly, a few times a year, there's films we schedule and we know we're going to lose money on that film. But that's part of the formula of delivering a Western to the people who want to see the Westerns, delivering a silent motion picture, and that variety, which it's fun, but it's challenging.
It's a real fine balance, with blockbusters and what I call kind of cult classics. But Mark puts it perfectly. Mark puts it perfectly. It's you do the big blockbuster shows so you can take the big swing, and every now and then that big swing becomes the hit,
And sometimes you might be bringing somebody to your theater for that lesser attended film for the first time. They fall in love with what you do, and you've earned yourself a new devoted customer. So sometimes the less successful shows on paper are very successful shows in terms of pulling in new audience members.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Very true. Very true.
Well, I know all of us, are so like-minded in our love of the cinematic experience and our love of movies. I'm always so curious where your love of movies comes from. A lot of us have been lucky enough to have a drive-in experience in our youth at the Mahoning. So I'll tie that kind of in with where did your love of movies come from, and were you guys lucky enough to have a childhood drive-in experience?
Well, I did. I grew up in northern Delaware, and we had drive-ins. We had one on the Governor Prince, one up in Claymont, and my parents would take us to the drive-in more so than a regular movie theater because it's something we could do together.
Yeah.
It was something my dad liked, so we used to love going to the drive-in. Even if we didn't pay attention to the movie, it was just being there was
Yeah,
a fun thing.
Same here. Yeah, growing up, siblings, we'd all pile in the car in our pajamas.
Yep.
And go to the drive-in and watch double feature. And for me, being the youngest, was like, okay, I'm way up past my bedtime, getting to see these movies that I would never get to see. Flash Gordon and Clash of the Titans and those types of things. And it was just amazing. So
Taking the crackly speaker into the window, it never sounded quite right.
Right.
The tin can sound. Yep, you gotta love it. How about Julie?
So, I love the drive-in theaters. To me, it's just one big slice of Americana, right? And I do have these memories, and it's interesting because you ask about hey, how do you what got you into the movies? And for me, it's I enjoy films, I enjoy movies, and I certainly have my favorites, but it's not so much that I'm into the motion pictures and cinema. What attracted me to the Everett was actually our neon marquee and the architecture. This again a piece of small town America. It's that Americana, and it's the same thing with the drive-in movies. I remember when I was growing up. First, it was in the when I was real young in the Chicago area until I was about 8. Then we moved to the Midwest, to Iowa. So that's where I grew up, and we would go regularly to just north of my town was in Forest City, Iowa, and there was a theater there, and that is where we would go to see most of our movies. And Mom and Dad loved to go. There was a small town single screen theater, and they loved to go there because it was less expensive than the cinemas in Mason City, which is just a little bit further away. And I must have been maybe 9 or 10 years old, and I remember standing in line waiting for concessions, and I felt a hand on my shoulder, and I turned around, and right away I recognized it's a little bit startling. It's the fellow who, kind of a scary guy. I mean, he was clearly the owner of the theater because he was always the guy with the flashlight who was getting after people for putting their feet on and all that kind of thing, And I was shocked. I was like, oh my gosh. And
what'd I do wrong, right?
Exactly. That my bewilderment and relief when suddenly he cracked a little bit of a smile and said, hey kid, how would you like to start the projector? I'm like,
oh my God.
And I was amazing. And so he took me up to the projection booth, and I got to flip the switch and all that. And it's something I have never forgotten. And I think that is part of what, from that moment on, the idea of going to see the movies was all the more special because I saw the projector and I saw how it worked. And then when we got to the drive-in movies, as a audience member, you could see a little bit better because that booth is kind of right there and you can kind of peer in and see what's going on. And so I mentioned Mason City. That was just a little bit further from where I grew up. There was the drive-in movie theater there. And we would pass by it. And finally I was telling my folks, let's go. Sadly, it wasn't until I was a teenager, maybe a teenager, because they took me, I guess, that we went there and it was their closing weekend. They were being torn down.
Oh, wow.
And so we got there, and I remember the shows. It was Men in Black and Twister.
Great double.
Right? So
Jesus.
one always remembers their first drive-in movie experience. Those were the films. And I remember from that moment on, I was hooked. And so then got my driver's license. And unfortunately now drive-in theater is gone, but hey, I move away to college. So before you know it, I'm getting all my college friends, and we're driving 2 hours from Iowa State University in Ames, Iowa. We're driving 2 hours to Newton, Iowa, to their drive-in theater because, guys, this drive-in experience
You
and
gotta get it. Yeah.
Gotta do it. So I'm used to traveling several hours at a time just to go to drive-in movies, and been to the 61 drive-in down near Davenport, Iowa, and gosh, I hope it's still there. But so yeah, those are my memories with the drive-in movies, and it was real special being able to finally bring my kids up to the drive-in movies and coming to the Mahoning. It was just full circle. And the neat thing is that Grant and Sophie, they had so much fun. They're like, when are we going back? And
it is fun.
So beautiful. Full
it
circle.
is. So we wish you guys were in our backyard, but you're not. But that's okay, because we're going to make the trip up, and we're very excited that several of your friends are coming down to see us. And wow, to bring the drive-in experience to our own theater is going to be really cool.
Yeah, it's such a treat for us, and we try to do the family events, big family events, at least once a month, because as you guys see with a lot of your family programming, that is your future. That is
True.
The key to your future success. Is if these kids fall in love with that experience the way that we fell in love with it, or your kids are falling in love with it, it just solidifies it in their hearts the same way that it did for us. So we can only hope so, Well, you brought up the road show. I don't want to take up all your time. I'm going to pass it over to Mark in case he has some questions for you guys. And then we'll talk a little bit about maybe the greatest double feature programmed in our 11-year run.
So I have a couple of questions regarding projection. Is it difficult to get carbon rods these days?
Yes, it is. It's not easy. We constantly look online, see if somebody's got some for sale, and if we find them, we kind of buy what we can, from them. You just can't go and order them. National Carbon's out of business, and they're not easy to find.
No two carbons are the same. As I've gone on the crusade to try to assemble more of these, I very quickly learned that not only are, for your positive and negative rods, they come in different sizes and for different purposes. You actually
you got to have the right ones or they don't burn. Right. I mean, I was always involved in railroad construction. So we used to use carbon rods to take welds out. And I used to think to myself, I can just bring these back and we can use them. No, they will not burn in there. They just go out. It's a different density. They don't work. So you got to have the right ones.
Over the course of a standard, let's say, hour-and-a-half movie, how many carbon rods do you go through?
Each rod will do 2 reels. So both negative and positive, they'll basically do 2 reels. So a rod will last, 40 minutes?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you can get 4 reels out of the
if you use
rod.
It maybe small rod you might be able to and we have little extenders you can kind of squeak more out of each rod, but they're hard to come by too, and some of them got burned up, not by me but by some other people. And,
these aren't sparklers.
Yeah.
So also Michael, do you have any tall tales from your years of projection? Any crazy things that happened? Any amazing ways to save a show or lose a show?
I had a belt break on the return reel. So if it doesn't return right, the film's just flopping around, going all over the floor, because it won't wind up. So we stopped it for a second and wound it up. And then I had somebody sit there by hand and just with a little rod in the reel and just kept turning it.
That's manpower. There.
And it works. I mean, it worked. Because I always had, at least I had somebody coming around that helped to do something like that. And then afterwards, I was able to fix the belt. I mean, the belt is a leather belt that's stapled together, So I had to shorten it up some and staple it together because little things like that. I've only had like 1 gear break the whole time I've been there. And I had to get a gear made for the projector. A local place made it for me. Put it in. It's been working ever since.
And I had to source some gasket material so we could.
I have some leaks. That's something I need to work on. We got leaks all over the place, but I just fill it with a lot of oil and let it run out.
This is kind of cool, but it's also very sad too.
Yeah.
Is that how old are they now? We'll see, 38. So how old?
Yeah.
We're looking at
They're old.
85, 87-year-old projectors are more reliable than the digital projector.
Oh, yeah. They usually just run all the time, right? And you figure how many hours those projectors had on them in the 40s, 50s, 60s.
How many miles of film? Yep.
Oh, my goodness. Because, back then they ran matinees, they ran double features, 7 days a week.
Right?
Those things ran.
It's true American machinery. That's what I love about keeping our booth door open for people is they just want to come in and see how it functions and how it works. And they're always taken aback by, oh my gosh, it's a machine. It's true. A machine. Yep. The idea that you can have something fashioned for you to fix it, that ain't happening with your ones and zeros of a digital machine if it goes down.
No, you got to throw it away and buy something new, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even the DC welder underneath the floor, I've only put brushes in it one time in 30-some years that I've been there.
Amazing.
I mean, it's just because it hardly ever runs now compared to what it's supposed to, It's amazing.
So I'll share, and sadly, these are the kinds of things you don't really learn it until it doesn't work, and then you have to make the mistake, and the audience sees it, and then you, because I've learned from Mike and everything, and
I've had film break before, and you have to stop and get it spliced together and start all over, and somebody's got to go out there and talk and make them happy while you're doing that.
Or you put it in backwards.
Oh, Jesus, yeah.
Or I had where you don't put the tensioner down, so then the sound
doesn't work, right? Little things like that can happen.
Yeah. And we're not saying that these are regular occasions at the Everett.
No.
Just talking about worst case scenarios
and
to show people
can happen.
Show people that being a projectionist is not pushing play and walking away. It's a lot of almost constant physical effort. That's what I tell people about our projectionist. I say it's the company health plan where they're lugging big reels, doing the changeovers, winding by hand, all that stuff. One of the things that the Everett is known for, as you said, are live theater productions. Are there any things that, since you guys have been there, that were really like milestones or memorable productions and things, whether it's a concert or a live show or anything like that you'd want to mention?
Oh gosh, we've had so many plays that have been so good. Jesus Christ Superstar was really good. This is going way back, Lee. You weren't alive. It was back, I don't know, 1992 or something, but that was a phenomenal play they did there. They really did a good job with it. But we've had a lot of great plays. I mean, the talent in our town is amazing, actually. It's quite impressive.
And these are predominantly local community plays as opposed to touring?
Local people, they just volunteer their time, come in, want to sing, want to dance, want to act, and they're good.
Oh, the local talent is nothing short of exceptional.
I mean, they're doing Beetlejuice
remarkable.
Right now. This weekend, they're doing Beetlejuice for the second weekend, and I saw it last weekend. The singers are just amazing, and it's the funniest play. You just dilate the whole time. It's hilarious.
The fact that you guys give young talent an outlet, it's so important. I grew up on a stage and started when I was real young. And most of my vivid memories are, stage plays and performances and things like that. It will solidify a community. It will uplift a community. The fact that you guys have a thriving theater community in general is a rare thing anymore.
Yes, and the plays pretty much fill the house every show. They really do good.
Beautiful.
Oh, they do. Family and friends, people are coming out, and literally we have people lining up around the block to come out, which is really great.
Yeah.
The one funny thing that I learned, lesson learned for us is, we as the film team collaborating with our live stage counterparts, and there's a little competition, and that kind of thing. And little bit of competition and also a little bit of this is mine, this is But one of the times we thought we try to collaborate a lot together, and one of the best times we collaborate is every year around Halloween when we do the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and we've been doing that in 35 millimeter but we got a shadow cast that comes out, and it's just a cult favorite. We do that at midnight, and it's just super popular. But one of the things that I did learn that we don't do anymore, we thought it would be another great idea. Well, let's movies and live stage, let's partner together. You do the live stage production and then we'll show the movie. Oh, that didn't work out. We got so much flack for that from live stage and our patrons and everybody, because we had people showing up for the movie that thought it was live stage, and then we had people showing up at live stage coming to see the movie. And that was 12 Angry Men. We did 12 Angry Men in the movie, and then 12 Angry Jurors live stage, and we got so much flack for that. We're never doing that again.
I thought you were going to say that people showed up for the 12 Angry Men live stage production dressed in their fishnets and ready to throw playing cards and toast. It was this horrible miscommunication. So that makes a lot more sense as to what you're saying. Speaking of community involvement, you also have a filmmaking program, and Mark, you're part of that. Could you talk to us about what that is? Because it sounds to me like that is the cinematic equivalent of the live theater programs that you do.
Yeah, and that's actually how I initially got involved with the Everett. Rewind the year plus or so ago, I was actually looking for a theater to potentially premiere one of my features, because I'm a filmmaker and I own a production company. That's how I make my living. And so I came across, I've always known the Everett was here. I've been living in Middletown since 2012, but my previous career just did not lend itself to having any time to do anything other than work. So it took us almost 10 years before we finally got involved with the theater. And we knew eventually we would, but so I was looking for, a theater, and I came across and saw that the Everett was starting a filmmaking program led by Peter Hoops, who's also a member of the board and also part of our movie team. And so I got his information, and I sent a cold email and said, hey, this is who I am. This is my partner and I do. We're right here in Middletown. We would love to talk to you. And, I got a multi-page email response from Peter, and then very quickly he came over, and within a few hour visit, we were finishing each other's sentences, and I knew we were just the right fit. So immediately he's like, you got to come see the theater. We did, immediately fell in love with it. And immediately he said, we're going to introduce you to Lee and the team. You should join the movie team. My first movie was Psycho for the high school kids. And then we produced the first film that the Everett produced along with my production company as a co-producers last year, which was remarkable because, again, we had the support of the community, we had the support of the theater, and we're able to, hold auditions and casting, and again, pulling on all our local talent from folks that were actively involved in the live stage. Our crew is part of folks that worked on live stage, and we made our first short film, and we are already now in writing script for our next one that's going to be later this year. And it's a program that it was Peter's vision, and we are, I'm so happy to support it, and it's growing, and we're excited to see where it's going to go, because we pulled off the short film. We had 2 days of filming, 5 locations, and it was amazing that we pulled it off. And the result we're very happy with. We did 4 screenings of the film at the theater in the fall last year, and now that film is actually available on the Everett website and their social medias. And again, we're gearing up for the next one, and it's really neat. And it was one of those. I had like an aha moment. I said to my wife, I'm like, we couldn't be at more of the heart of the community than being a part of the theater, and seeing how much this theater impacts the community and how much folks get out of it. All the more why, it just motivated us to volunteer and be, we try to do as many movies as we can and try to support the theater. Even if it's through sometimes sponsoring with ads, or we even sponsored a film last year, just because we know how important it is, and we'll do everything we can to see the theater thrive and grow and give back to the community. So it's been a really amazing experience, and I look forward to just seeing where it goes. It's been, and getting to know these, Lee and Mike and a lot of the other folks on the team and on board, and just new friends, new family. So it's been really wonderful.
Yeah, that's very true, Mark. And, we truly touch the community in every sense of the way of engaging everyone, because one of the things that you're doing right now, we have the theater having burned down twice in 100 some years. When we celebrate our 10th centennial a couple of years ago, we welcomed the volunteer fire company. They came over and they brought over some of our town is really cool. They don't have an antique fire truck. They have antique fire cart that was horse-drawn, which rarely ever gets out of the fire hall, but they brought it out for our centennial, which was really cool because it was there that the night that the theater had burned down. And of course their trucks have visited us on several occasions. We've had false alarms.
False alarms, they right? Show up, yes.
They show up very quickly. There's a lot of care and concern, but we have a close relationship with the volunteer fire company. And Mark, you and your filmmaking team are going to be putting together a recruitment video, which, I mean, how cool is that? And what a great way to reach out and make people aware of these really cool things that we do for our communities.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's something that we're going to be starting the pre-production on soon and kind of getting that together and helping the fire department with the recruitment, because I know it's been a challenge that they've had.
Yeah, can't get people.
Boy, I am so happily jealous of the people who live in and around Middletown, Delaware, to have your theater, because this just sounds like the coolest place and the most caring and open and wonderful and welcoming place. I'm really excited that we are hooking up to do this really silly thing that we're going to do on Friday, March 7th. Let's get into that. So Friday, March 7th, the Everett Theatre, in case you weren't sure what we were talking about all this time, it is going to be a double feature, an actual double feature that played drive-ins across the country back in 1966. It's The Ghost and Mr. Chicken starring Don Knotts, and it is Munster Go Home starring the Munsters in their first all-color, well, only really all-color feature film, and they're fantastic films. Ghost and Mr. Chicken is one I remember seeing on TV as a kid and loving it. Don Knotts is just so much fun. Doesn't get the credit he deserves these days. And Munster Go Home, we ran the print we'll be playing at the Everett. We ran, I think, 2 years ago, and it is a beautiful, blazing Technicolor print. I was stunned. I was sitting in the front row at our theater watching it on our giant screen, and I was like, this almost looks digital in that the print is so flawless and it looks so good. So your carbon arc projectors are going to do a lot of justice to this film. With the way the road show works is that it starts off with Virgil and I on stage, and we do some opening comments. We talk about the history of drive-ins. We talk about our drive-in. We talk about the movies, and then we turn it over to the projectionist to run vintage 35 millimeter trailers that are period accurate and snack bar ads and things like that. We'll have a vintage intermission reel. You guys may be adding a little spice to the program, from what I hear, with some content that you have on 35, and we just sort of recreate the experience of going to a drive-in minus mosquitoes, rain, fog, heat, all that stuff. And there's also some other things we've been talking about behind the scenes that I don't know if you guys want to let into that slip, but we have some more value added that we'll be bringing to that show.
Absolutely. And I think we should let our audience know now. We're very excited that in addition to you guys bringing your team and resources, and the really cool, I understand you're going to be given some background, a little history about the Mahoning and drive-in theaters in general. We want to celebrate and recognize that. We've arranged for several classic automobiles to come on out. We want to kind of feel the whole driving experience. So we're going to have classic cars parked out front and kind of bring in that feel, and that'll be really cool.
And we have Tom Bafuco working on, I think it's actually done, an amazing event poster, which has become such a staple for the Mahoning. When we first started, we talked about, let's make this like a rock concert, but for movies, give people memorabilia to take home and things like that. And that'll be the case for sure. You get the Roadshow t-shirt, you got the limited edition poster, the classic cars. I mean, it's going to be a whole vibe for sure.
Well, when you're going to be delighted when you come up into our projection booth. One of the first things you're going to see is a Mahoning poster from your opening night in 2020, which was a little late, but it was really cool because it merged Willy Wonka and the Wicked Witch of the West, and it was one of the coolest pictures. And Virgil, I think that was our most recent thing. It was like, oh man, who made that? Because we want to do a cool poster, but so. Man, when you suggested that, hey, let's do a poster for this, we're very excited about being part of that really neat tradition that you have, and to have our own, the Everett's partnered poster with the Mahoning is really cool. Yeah. And I like the way your artist tied our theaters together. And I guess maybe that should be a surprise for everyone, but That's really cool.
Yeah, talk about the state. We have the staple marquee, as you mentioned. You were drawn to it at the road. You guys also have a beautiful marquee that is also tied to your promotions.
No, that's
Yes.
exactly right. And man, he just so brilliantly pulled those together in the poster that if you're from the Everett, you're going to recognize it. If you're from the Mahoning, you're going to recognize it right away. And so that's going to be neat. How many of these are going to be limited edition posters, right? Limited run.
That's right, and we're actually going to get Tom, I believe, to sign each one, so it'll be a nice collectible piece, as this show will be. You know, everybody will want to take a piece of it home. As we always say, give them something to remember for years to come, not just the disposable 2 hours. You know.
You may have to give us some tips as part of this experience, just as bringing in the posters. But maybe we'll need to add to our concessions inventory with some things that kind of go with the drive-in experience, in addition to Middletown's best popcorn.
Can never go wrong with a corn dog.
Ooh yeah.
Speaking of the drive-in, there is a question we ask everybody on the show, and it's a fun puzzler. And if you need to take time to think on it, I'll play the match game music. But if you, each of you, could answer this, if you could program a night or a weekend at the Mahoning, regardless of the financial ruin that might be a result of the titles you pick, what movies would you play?
Oh boy.
Oh.
It's a loaded one, I know.
It
The
is.
the nice preface of it doesn't matter if it makes money is pretty important.
Right. Right.
All right, well, this is an easy one for me. So my favorite movie of all time is American Graffiti. So absolutely, it would have to be American Graffiti. And how better than that? Drive-in theater, classic cars. It just
Yeah, it does fit.
it ties it all in. And what would be that's right, because now we got double feature. Hey, you guys have to do 2 movies because this is challenging.
Mhm.
Licensing not just one but 2 films at one time. I think since money's no object and wouldn't necessarily have to be from the same studio, then that I guess that's my question for you. I guess I'll come back to that. I would probably look at Star Wars, right? That ties it all in. Same
Come on.
director, George Lucas, right? So American Graffiti followed by Star Wars. And don't tell me episode 4. We're talking 35 millimeter here. So this is
Star Wars.
Star Wars,
Original, right.
which I don't know if you can get that in 35 millimeter now.
They will not let you run the original, that is for sure.
Wow.
So here's my question. Sorry, a little bit out of order, but this has been fun, like partnering and pulling this together and doing a double feature. It makes sense to, license. You want films from the same studio so you can get a better deal. Is that what you have to do whenever you're doing your double features, or do you kind of shake it up? How does that work?
It's incredibly rare that we work with the same studio on a double feature. Sometimes we'll get lucky, but we find it is very standard with what we pay to license a print, to get a print here. So we have kind of this set budget for every single show, but yeah, it really depends. And what we're finding now is it's harder and harder to get prints from the studio. So private collectors have become so essential to a place like the Mahoning or what you guys do, in that you can save a little bit from the studio if you're not sourcing, or they're not having to do all the work of inspecting a film and getting it to you. So we find that that's a big savior for us as far as like a bargaining chip. But yeah, pretty standard as far as that percentage that's built in, just like you guys feel,
So
It
I
is.
think the first film, I probably would do John Carpenter's The Thing.
Yeah.
And then with the late night weirdo film, I would do Buckaroo Banzai, which I don't know if anyone knows
Boom.
Banzai, but that is it's still a classic film. And I had to bite my tongue just last week when I was working a press line at Sundance, and there's John Lithgow, and I'm like, Buckaroo Banzai, and I'm like, wait, I'm the camera person. Like, I'm not supposed to talk to the talent. Like, I'm just supposed to be quiet behind the camera. But I'm like, he's right there.
Oh my
'cause,
God.
I saw that in the theater as a kid. Like, I mean, so it just made one of those impressions. Like, it's just an incredible movie. It's a weirdo movie, but I mean, you can't go wrong with Peter Weller and
Right.
Jeff Goldblum and Ellen Barkin.
Yeah.
and John Lithgow and Christopher Lloyd. I mean, this powerhouse cast with this weirdo indie. He's a neurosurgeon / rock star by day, interdimensional traveler by night, or vice versa. It's like this.
It is a gem. We tried to get it last year for the anniversary, and the studio has lost rights to it. So it's like one of those films that's in limbo, like between, studios and an independent rights holder. So it's an elusive one, but man, that would play incredibly well. We got Flash Gordon opening up our Thursday series this year.
Wow.
And I always wanted to double those up, Maybe Flash Gordon and Barbarella would be the move, right?
Yeah, Flash Gordon was the late night film that I saw at the drive-in as a kid. So
Yes.
Strong memories of that one. Yeah.
My Flash Gordon story that I've told on the podcast a long time ago was that I begged my mother to take me to see this movie called The Night the Lights Went Out in Georgia, which nobody remembers. It starred Christy McNichol and Dennis Quaid and Mark Hamill, and I wanted to see it because Luke Skywalker was in a different movie, and it was being shown second that night. So we sat through the Willie Nelson film Honeysuckle Rose, which is not what I wanted to see at the age I was at, and got to hear On the Road Again a bunch of times. And then it got time to intermission, and it was intermission, and I loved the countdown reel. And then they played a cartoon, and I was like, oh, cool, a cartoon. Then they played another cartoon, and I was like, this is great, but they don't usually play this much between the movies. And then they started playing a 1950s trailer for the Jimmy Fund in black and white. And I'm like, they're stalling. They're throwing on anything they can throw on right now. And then finally they came on over the PA and said the print of The Night the Lights Went Out in Georgia had not arrived yet from another theater, but they still had Flash Gordon. And I was there to see Luke Skywalker as a policeman. By gum, I didn't want to see Gordon. So we took the rain check and we left. And there's more to that story. But the point is, I only ever saw the first 2 minutes of Flash Gordon at a drive-in. And now, holy Lord, 45 years later, I am able to finally see Flash Gordon in its entirety at a drive-in. And that's at the drive-in.
Wow.
Full circle, baby. Full circle.
That's going to be incredible. And you said that's opening up for Thursday?
Yeah, we started doing Thursday events because we found that, a lot of our audience is not local. So if they're coming in for a Friday, Saturday show, sometimes they are literally traveling in and staying over Thursday. It's a unique situation for us because we've been able to survive because we're in the middle of nowhere, but we've been able to survive now because we're close enough to a tourist town that I think there's a small percentage of just curious people looking for things to do on a random Thursday night that we can make it work,
I'll have to keep an eye out for that because I haven't seen. I don't think I've seen it since I saw it in the drive-in when I was a kid. So it's.
Oh wow!
I'm gonna keep pushing for Buckaroo too. I'll keep you on the.
That would be amazing. Yeah, if you get Buckaroo, I'll be camping out for that one. That would be amazing.
So you're talking about Mark Hamill and something other than Luke Skywalker. Right. That makes me Corvette Summer.
Yes.
Another great drive-in movie.
We've never run that, but that would be fantastic. Just a car movie at the drive-in to me is just like there's nowhere better to see.
That always works. Right.
Yeah.
Well, we could talk to you guys for literally another probably 5 hours. We should definitely have you guys back. And we're hoping that this is such a success for you guys that we can make this a regular stop and an annual thing that people look forward to every single year. So I got to say, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you for what you are doing for not just your local community, but the cinematic community at large. If it were not like houses like the Everett and the Mahoning, 35 millimeter would be a dead format. So go and support places that put their heart and all of their effort into that presentation. So hats off to you guys.
Well, the feelings are very mutual. Yeah. We can't wait to host you guys and your 35 millimeter team. Come help Mike out and do some changeovers. But also, we've been quite literally talking about we're going to get our film volunteer team to make a trip up to see you guys and
kind of try to come all up together at the same time.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be so great.
And we're really excited about the fact that, what a fabulous idea to keep you busy during the off season, but to very generously introduce your audience to other theaters around the East Coast. And for us, to introduce our audience to the drive-in theater. And so many people, they recognize, oh yeah, that's cool. And they don't really recognize that they want it to survive and they want it to be there, but they're a part of making that happen. And so raising this awareness, and I'm very excited about the fact that many of our patrons will be able to introduce them to you and your program. And it's just a great thing. We have a really wonderful thing going with 35 millimeters, movies and drive-ins. And now we can just expand it and deliver it to new people that haven't experienced it before.
Just like this podcast has been a gift that keeps on giving, the road show is certainly turning out to be the same situation. We have amazing support and listenership with this podcast and with the Mahoning, as you guys know. Can you let the audience know where they can go to support you guys, whether it's social media, website, keep their finger on the pulse of the programming?
Absolutely. Well, thank you. So, we have a presence on social media, on Facebook, and but also our website, and it's easy to remember. It's www.theeverett, 2 T's, theeverett.org, and go on there, and it's an opportunity to read a little bit about the history of the theater, see our live stage performance schedules, and our upcoming movies and films, which click on there now and you'll see something really cool happening on Friday, March the 7th.
That's right, baby. Ghost and Mr. Chicken, Munster, go home. We are all going to watch these projectors sing. We cannot wait. Thank you again, Mike, Lee, Mark from the Everett team. Such a great time. And can't wait to have you guys back on.
It'll be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're looking forward to it.
And on that note, Jeff, take it away, my friend.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for coming out tonight to the Mahoning Drive-In Theater. We hope you'll come back and see us again real soon. The exit is on the right-hand side of the screen at the front of the field, and most importantly, have a very safe trip home. Good night and God bless you.